The desert sun beats down with a relentless white heat onto the cracked tarmac of the small airfield. A rusted propeller plane rolls slowly toward the departure line. Its paint is peeling in long strips like burnt skin. The engine coughs and splutters with a heavy, reluctant rhythm. The crowd gathered at the fence begins to snicker and point their phones. "That relic won't even lift," someone shouts over the mechanical rattle. Inside the cockpit, a single father tightens his harness. His daughter stands behind the safety fence, giving him a firm thumbs up. The control tower hesitates before clearing the flight. The plane accelerates, painfully slow. The laughter grows louder. Then a different roar tears the sky wide open. Two elite fighter jets appear from the clouds. Ethan Cole carries the weight of a man who has seen more of the sky than the earth beneath his feet. To the regulars at the desert airfield, he is simply the quiet single father who spends his weekends tinkering with a machine that belongs in a museum. His hands are permanently stained with oil, the grease etched so deeply into the lines of his palms that no amount of scrubbing can remove it. Ethan lives a modest life in a small house near the perimeter fence with his 11-year-old daughter, Ava. Since his wife passed away years ago from a sudden, tragic illness, Ethan has been both mother and father, teacher and protector. He bought the old propeller plane, a weathered 1950s utility craft, using every cent of his military pension and several high-interest loans, working well past midnight under a flickering shop light to keep it airworthy. The local pilots flying sleek, million-dollar Cirrus jets with air-conditioned cockpits call him the relic hunter or the vintage dreamer, and rarely in a kind way. In an era of fly-by-wire systems and glass cockpits that practically fly themselves, Ethan's choice of aircraft seems like a pathetic joke to them. They see chipped paint, oil leaks, and analog dials. They don't know Ethan was once an elite test pilot for the Air Force's Black Ops Division. He understands the structural limits of stressed aluminum and the complex physics of high-altitude stalls in his marrow. His military career ended when he was made the scapegoat for a prototype engine failure during a classified mission, a mechanical flaw he couldn't prove at the time. He left the service without medals, his wings clipped, and his reputation tarnished, but his soul remained stubbornly intact. The airfield environment is harsh, characterized by the smell of parched earth and aviation fuel. Ethan chose civilian charters because it allowed him to be home every night for Ava, to cook her dinner and help with her math homework. He didn't need the adrenaline of the afterburners anymore. He just needed the air in his lungs and the sight of his daughter waiting for him in the front seat of his battered truck. Today, however, is a rare exception. A flight demonstration for a group of skeptical private investors who are looking for rugged, low-detection transport. The crowd at the fence laughs because they only understand what is modern, shiny, and automated. They don't understand the terrifying strength of a foundation built on 30,000 hours of manual flight time and a deep spiritual connection to aerodynamics. Ava stands by the chain-link fence, wearing oversized noise-canceling headphones to block out the harsh desert wind. She doesn't hear the jeers or the mocking comments from the groups of teenagers filming the antique for their social media feeds. She only sees her hero. She knows that when her father sits in that cockpit, he isn't just a man with a wrench anymore. He becomes an extension of the machine itself. Ethan moves through his pre-flight checklist with a focus so intense, it borders on the religious. He doesn't just look at the gauges. He feels the vibration of the airframe through the soles of his boots. He checks the tension on the manual control cables, feeling for the slight resistance that tells him the elevators are responsive. He listens to the rhythmic throb of the fuel pump, a steady heartbeat in a metal chest. Ethan knows that this engine, despite its age, has been rebuilt with a precision that exceeds factory standards. He has hand-polished every valve and balanced the propeller to within a fraction of a gram. He ignores the heat and the jeers, hearing only the ancient conversation between the wind and the wing. The cockpit is an arena of nostalgia and grit, filled with the scent of old leather and hydraulic fluid. The tower's voice crackles in his headset with a layer of professional condescension. "Victor 1, be advised, wind shear is reported near the ridge. Runway 6 is clear, if you think you can make the climb." Ethan merely taps the glass of the altimeter, a silent greeting to an old friend. He doesn't take the bait. He pushes the throttle forward inch by inch, feeling the engine respond with a raw, mechanical scream that shakes the ground and rattles the teeth of the people at the fence. The world outside the canopy blurs into a streak of tan and gray. He doesn't pull up early to satisfy the crowd. He waits for the precise microsecond when the air pressure becomes a physical reality, lifting the wings with the force of an unseen hand. Ethan's mind is a theater of physics. He calculates the weight of the fuel, the density of the hot desert air, and the lift-to-drag ratio of the weathered wings. Every second on the ground is a calculation of energy and momentum. He knows the exact point where the tarmac ends and the scrub brush begins. He isn't flying by a digital manual. He is flying by a primal instinct that has survived 100 near misses. The engine roars, a defiant shout against the desert heat. Just as the wheels seem destined to run out of road, Ethan pulls back with a firm, masterful grace. The plane doesn't just lift, it soars, leaving the laughter of the crowd in the dust. The climb is steep and steady, a silent rebuke to everyone who thought the relic would never leave the earth. The plane gathers speed, looking like a disaster in slow motion to the uninitiated. The airframe shakes violently as the tires hit the deep cracks in the neglected tarmac, making the whole machine look like it's about to rattle apart. At the fence, the mocking reaches a fever pitch. "It's a flying coffin," an engineer sneers, holding his phone out to capture the inevitable failure. Ethan keeps the nose pinned low, resisting the urge to show off. He knows that forcing the lift too early will starve the engine of its precious momentum. He reads the thermal updrafts that modern sensors in the tower can't even detect, feeling the heat rise from the blacktop as if he were reading a topographical map with his skin. As the pavement finally ends, Ethan pulls back. The wheels leave the ground with a suddenness that defies the crowd's expectations. The transition is liquid, a perfect arc into the sky. The landing gear retracts with a heavy, satisfying mechanical clunk, a sound of gears locking into place that resonates through the floorboards. The laughter at the fence dies instantly, replaced by a stunned silence. They expected a crash, but they just witnessed a masterclass in short-field takeoff. Yet for many, the skepticism remains. They assume it's a fluke, a lucky gust of wind, or a momentary surge of power from a dying engine. They wait for the antique to falter in the first bank. As Ethan climbs higher into the searing blue vault of the desert sky, his radio begins to hiss with a strange, high-level interference. This isn't the standard chatter from the civilian tower. It is an encrypted burst, military-grade triple-tier encryption. A voice suddenly cuts through the static, icy and professional, using a 12-digit verification sequence that Ethan hasn't used in a decade. His heart skips a beat, a surge of old, dormant adrenaline flooding his system. His hands, usually as steady as stone, feel a phantom vibration. This is the frequency reserved for high-value asset protection and priority national security intercepts. The voice on the other end carries a weight of authority that commands immediate obedience. Ethan realizes that his quiet life has just collided with his classified past. Ethan keys his mic and answers with the complex syntax of his Black Ops days, a language of codes and acronyms designed to convey maximum information with minimum exposure. Eagle lead, active and verified, standing by for vector instructions. He immediately banks the plane sharply to the left, pulling a hard 4G turn that makes the old wings groan and the rivets scream in protest. His maneuvers are no longer those of a civilian charter pilot. They are aggressive, precise, and lethal. The crowd below looks up, their eyes squinting against the sun, as the propeller plane executes a series of perfect, tight combat turns that should be physically impossible for a machine of its vintage. The air around the cockpit suddenly begins to vibrate with a raw, terrifying power that dwarfs the sound of Ethan's own engine. It is a physical force, a bone-shaking thunder that makes the glass of the canopy rattle in its frame. From the blinding white glare of the sun, two dark shapes materialize with impossible speed. They are sleek, charcoal gray, and look like predators from another world. Two F-35 Lightning II stealth jets, the absolute pinnacle of modern aerial warfare, drop their flaps and slow their massive engines to match Ethan's pace. They take up positions exactly 5 feet from his wingtips, their dark, polarized cockpits reflecting the sun-scorched desert floor below. The control tower goes dead silent. The spectators at the fence drop their phones into the dirt. The snickering is gone, replaced by an overwhelming, suffocating sense of awe and terror. These aren't just planes. They are the hand of the government. The two fighter pilots keep formation with a level of precision that is a direct tribute to the old plane in the center. They are saluting a man they were taught to idolize in secret, a legend who survived the missions they only read about in classified files. Ethan feels a heavy lump in his throat as he looks down at the tiny figure of Ava by the fence. She isn't jumping or cheering like the others. She is just standing there, her small thumb still raised, as if she knew all along that the sky would eventually recognize its king. The formation sweeps across the airfield, a low-level pass that rattles the windows of the terminal. The contrast is staggering. The weathered silver skin of the 1950s craft flanked by the matte black, angular shapes of the 21st century's most advanced killers. It is a visual representation of Ethan's life, the old soldier protected by the new generation. The investors on the ground are now frantically talking into their phones, their skepticism replaced by a desperate desire to sign whatever contract Ethan wants. The atmosphere has shifted from ridicule to reverence in a matter of heartbeats. Every maneuver Ethan performs is a silent testament to the thousands of hours he spent perfecting his craft in the shadows. But Ethan isn't looking at them. He is looking at the horizon, focused on the mission that has just become much more than a demonstration. In the high-altitude silence of the cockpit, far above the reach of the crowd's eyes, the true test begins. Ethan feels a sharp, high-frequency vibration through the control stick. A microscopic stress fracture in the left-wing spar is finally giving way under the immense pressure of the high-G combat maneuvers he just performed. Any other pilot would have panicked, but Ethan feels the failure in his teeth before any gauge can show it. He knows the feel of metal fatigue, like a doctor knows a pulse. He doesn't call for an emergency landing. He knows that if he signals distress, the mission and his hard-won reputation might be compromised again. Instead, he performs a series of incredibly delicate manual trim adjustments, techniques lost to the modern age of computer-stabilized flight. He subtly reduces the manifold pressure and adjusts the fuel mixture to change the engine's vibration frequency, while simultaneously tweaking the aileron trim tabs to shift the center of lift 6 inches away from the weakened spar. He is flying by the hands that remember, employing a spiritual connection to the air that transcends technology. He balances the aircraft on a knife's edge, utilizing every ounce of his experience to keep the structural failure from becoming catastrophic. The vibration begins to dampen. The wing stabilizes. It is a silent, invisible victory of pure airmanship that the crowd below cannot possibly comprehend. But the two fighter pilots on his wings recognize it instantly. They see him correcting for a structural failure with nothing but his fingertips and a warrior's grit. The encrypted radio returns, its tone now reverent. Eagle Lead, this is Skywatch. Your identity has been verified by the Joint Chiefs. The sector is yours, sir. We apologize for the delay in recognizing your status. It's an honor to have you back in the net. The two jets aren't there for a parade. They are providing a combat screen for a high-priority, off-the-books escort mission. Ethan's obsolete plane was the only craft capable of carrying a specific set of sensitive analog navigational hardware, tech that modern electronic warfare systems can't jam or track, across the border for a secure military handoff. Below, the radar screens in the tower are going haywire. The controllers are seeing 3 blips, but 2 of them have no transponders. They are ghosts with the authority to be anywhere. The lead fighter pilot, a major with a chest full of medals, keys his mic on the open civilian frequency, ensuring his voice is heard by everyone. All civilian traffic, be advised. You are looking at a recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross and a master test pilot. Maintain radio silence and clear the airspace immediately. We are in formation with a legend of this Air Force. The words hit the ground like a shockwave. The people who mocked him are frozen in collective shock, their earlier laughter now a source of deep, burning shame. Ethan executes the mission with machine-like efficiency, leading the formation across the desert horizon. The sky recognizes its owner. The wind that was once a chaotic enemy is now his partner, providing the lift he needs to keep the wounded wing airborne. Below, the atmosphere at the airfield has transformed. Wealthy investors are frantically calling their corporate offices, realizing the man they almost insulted is the most valuable aviation asset in the country. They see the power Ethan commands, not through money, but through a lifetime of excellence that cannot be bought or faked. As the formation prepares for its final pass, the jets break into an earth-shaking vertical climb, their afterburners igniting like twin suns against the darkening sky. They leave behind two massive white trails of smoke that perfectly frame Ethan's old plane as he begins his final descent. He is alone in the air again, but the silence is fundamentally different now. It is a respectful, heavy silence. He aligns with the runway. His approach is steady and as perfect as a heartbeat. He is a hero because he dared to fly in the face of the world's laughter, holding on to the sky when everyone else would have let go. He manages the descent with a masterful touch, calculating the exact glide slope needed to minimize stress on the airframe. The final turn into the landing pattern is a work of art. Ethan manages the failing wing with a surgeon's precision, keeping the bank angle shallow and the airspeed high enough to prevent a stall, but low enough to avoid further structural damage. The landing flare is a delicate dance between gravity and lift. He touches down at the exact center of the runway, the tires kissing the tarmac with a sound no louder than a sigh. As the plane rolls to a stop, the engine gives one last, triumphant puff of smoke and settles into a satisfied hum. Ethan takes a deep breath, the scent of high-altitude air still filling his lungs. He has done it. He has delivered the cargo in his own dignity, not just for the mission, but for Ava. Ethan touches down with a softness that barely disturbs the desert dust. The airfield is plunged into an eerie, unnatural quiet as the propeller slows and eventually halts. The two fighter jets have already vanished into the high atmosphere, leaving only their fading contrails as a signature of their respect. Before Ethan can even begin to unbuckle his worn leather harness, three obsidian black government SUVs tear across the tarmac from the restricted side of the base, their tires kicking up plumes of dry earth. The sirens are silent, but the presence is unmistakable. The doors fly open simultaneously, and a team of men in tactical gear forms a perimeter, not out of aggression, but to ensure the privacy of the moment. A high-ranking general in full-service dress, accompanied by a detail of security personnel, steps out and stands at stiff, formal attention beside the cockpit. This isn't a security breach. This is a state arrival. The general offers a thick leather folder, a formal presidential restoration of Ethan's rank, his back pay, and an urgent invitation to return to the service as chief technical instructor for the entire experimental flight program. The technical incident from a decade ago hasn't just been reevaluated, it has been completely scrubbed from the record as a result of new evidence uncovered during recent field audits. The general's eyes meet Ethan's, conveying a decade's worth of unspoken apology. The report was buried by men who were afraid of their own shadows, Colonel, the general says, his voice gravelly but sincere. We found the original sensor data from that prototype. It wasn't your error. It was a failure of the design that you actually managed to keep in the air for 10 minutes longer than physics should have allowed. We were wrong. The Department of Defense owes you a debt that a folder can't repay. Ethan looks at the folder, but his mind is on the years spent in the grease-stained overalls. The countless times he had to tell Ava they couldn't afford a new toy because the plane needed a new fuel pump. The bitterness that had anchored his soul for 10 years begins to evaporate, not because of the money or the rank, but because the truth finally found its way out of the dark. The media and investors rush forward with their cameras flashing, but Ethan ignores them. He steps off the wing, his oil-stained boots hitting the pavement with a solid thud that echoes in the silence. He pushes through the wall of suits and reporters without uttering a single word. His face is a mask of stoic indifference to the fame that now surrounds him. He doesn't see the lenses or the gold braid on the general's shoulders. He only sees the yellow tape of the safety fence and the small girl standing behind it. He finds Ava. She is still there, her headphones around her neck. her eyes reflecting the orange glow of the sunset and a pride that no metal could ever match. "Did they laugh at you, Daddy?" she asked quietly. Ethan scoops her up, the familiar smell of grease and ozone clinging to his clothes. He smiles, a real, unburdened smile that reaches his eyes for the first time in a decade. They didn't just laugh, Ava. They listened. And today, the sky remembered everything. The general approaches again, his voice low and pleading. "The Air Force needs you back, Ethan. The new generation, they only know how to monitor systems. They're becoming slaves to the algorithms. If the power goes out, they're just passengers in a metal box. They need the man who can feel the air in his bones. They need the master." The general knows that Ethan's skills are a bridge between the heroic past and the automated future. Ethan takes the folder, but stays focused on his daughter's face. He makes a choice that isn't about rank or prestige. "I'll help," he says firmly, his voice echoing with a new authority. "But I'm not putting the uniform back on, and I'm not leaving my daughter to be raised by nannies. We do this here, on my terms. We build a facility where the soul of flight is more important than the software. We teach them the basics. We teach them what to do when the computers go dark and the software fails. We teach them how to be pilots, not operators." The general nods slowly, a look of profound relief on his face. The authority is humbled. Ethan and Ava walk toward their old rusting truck. No one mocks the peeling paint now. They stand in a silent line of honor for the pilot who flew a relic and woke the giants of the sky. The desert airfield became the propeller school, the most prestigious and whispered about training ground in the world. Elite pilots from every branch were sent there to learn the lost arts of manual aviation from a quiet man in a faded flannel shirt. He taught them that a plane is a living entity, not a computer terminal. He showed them how to read the clouds without radar and how to feel the tension of a wire through the stick. He taught them the language of the wind and the limits of the metal. Ethan spent his days on the ground, guiding the next generation, while Ava sat in the front row of every briefing, the apprentice of a legend. Ethan stayed away from the spotlight, preferring his tools and the open sky. His plane was meticulously restored with a coat of silver that shone like a mirror, featuring a subtle emblem, 2 jets framing a golden propeller. It was a mark of respect that no other civilian aircraft carried. The investors who once laughed were now the school's biggest sponsors, eager to be associated with such a legendary figure. They realized that true value isn't always found in the latest technology, but in the hands of those who mastered the fundamentals. One Sunday afternoon, as the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, Ethan sat on the porch of the airfield's office, watching a young cadet struggle with a manual crosswind landing. Ava sat beside him, swinging her legs. "What really changed that day, Daddy?" she asked. "A year ago, they thought we were a joke. Now they come from all over the world just to hear you speak." Ethan took a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes never leaving the sky. "Nothing actually changed, Ava. The plane is the same. I'm the same man. The only thing that happened is that the world finally stopped talking long enough to hear the sky. People laugh at what they don't understand because they're afraid of the past and the effort it takes to master it. But the past is what keeps the future from falling out of the air." He watched the cadet finally find the right angle and stick a perfect landing, a small smile of pride touching his lips. He knew that as long as people remembered how to feel the wind, the sky would never be a lonely place. Ethan eventually retired, but his presence remained etched into every square inch of that runway. When people see a rusted machine or an old man with grease under his fingernails now, they don't laugh. They stop and look up at the clouds, wondering if the giants are still keeping watch over the man who taught them how to truly fly. The story of the single dad became a legend, a permanent reminder that you don't need the newest wings to reach the highest peaks. You just need the heart to hold on to the sky when everyone else lets go. The desert wind still carries the sound of a distant propeller, a rhythmic reminder of the day the relic proved it was a king. The screen fades to black with a final message. When the world laughs at what is old, let the sky give the answer. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stay in the right rhythm. If this story of hidden legends and a father's unwavering spirit moved you, Please hit the subscribe button and join Daddy Healing Stories. We share tales of unsung heroes and the unbreakable bonds that keep us grounded while we reach for the stars. Your support helps us bring these stories of hope and strength to life. Thank you for being part of our journey.